You know that sound a fortune makes when it's nervous. It's a steady, electric whisper, like 1,000 mechanical insects trapped inside a freezer. That sound is my everyday reality. I'm standing in row 7 of the primary server hall, surrounded by endless racks of blinking lights, listening to industrial cooling units battle a violent storm outside. The building shudders as heavy winds slam into the steel siding of what most people would mistake for an oversized warehouse. Outside, the sky has turned a deep slate, blue, the kind that signals nature is about to make terrible decisions. Inside, the temperature holds steady at 67 degrees F, the air thick with the scent of ionized metal, cleaning solvent, and old insulation. My name is Rachel Moore. I'm 42 years old. My lower back protests every time humidity rises, and for the past 14 years, I've quietly kept an entire region from going offline. Officially, my title is Infrastructure Operations Supervisor. Unofficially, I'm the mechanic of the digital world, the one who crawls under raised floors at 2:30 a.m. when backup systems start choking and alarms won't stop screaming. I'm not telling this story for sympathy. I'm writing it because sometimes the only way to save the structure is to let it collapse. And I did exactly that. But before I explain how a single pen, a filing cabinet, and government regulations dismantled a corporate empire, take a second. Hit subscribe, drop a like. The algorithm favors the exhausted, and there are plenty of people, one bad boss away from losing it. Good. Now back to the mess. This facility, let's call it Northbridge Systems, wasn't always critical infrastructure. 14 years ago, it was a forgotten concrete shell, packed with obsolete machines and questionable wiring that looked like it belonged in a decommissioned submarine. That changed after the grid failure. You remember it, power outages across multiple counties, homes turning into ovens, emergency rooms running on skeleton power. I was a junior technician back then, working under Walter Hayes, the owner. Walter was the kind of man whose confidence came exclusively from money, not competence. When everything failed, he was relaxing at a resort in Cabo San Aurelio. I was here. For 72 hours, I slept on a folding cot beside the auxiliary generators, manually refueling them while reprogramming trance, for switches with a flashlight clenched between my teeth. Server temperatures spiked into dangerous territory. Still, nothing went down. When power returned everywhere else, our facility never blinked. That's when the contracts came. The Regional Medical Alliance moved its records here. The Emergency Dispatch Backup System, RAC 19. Even the chemical processing plant on the outskirts of Riverton City, whose safety monitors run entirely through our fiber lines. I didn't build this with cash. Walter barely approved budgets. I built it with stress, missed holidays, and anxiety, induced insomnia. I know every cable beneath the floor. I know which cooling unit in Sector C rattles because its bearing needs lubrication every third Wednesday. I know the night guard's kids by name. I'm not just staff. I'm structural support. That morning, as thunder rolled outside, I felt calm, prepared. I checked humidity 46%, fuel reserves full. I was commanding a vessel that never moved, yet transmitted the world at light speed. Near the entrance hung the compliance wall, rows of framed state and federal certifications. Dull paperwork no one ever reads, except if you look closely. One name appears again and again under Responsible Operator. Rachel Moore License ID, CX 77194, according to the Federal Infrastructure Safety Bureau, the National Risk Oversight Council, and multiple insurers. I am this building. Walter owns the land, I own the accountability. If something fails, they don't call him, they call me. I stared at my name longer than usual. Maybe it was the storm, or maybe it was the sudden mandatory staff meeting scheduled for 9:30 a.m. Walter only showed up for 2 reasons, bragging or cutting costs. Hey, Ratch, someone called out. It was Evan, one of my senior technicians, quiet guy, covered in tattoos, could reroute fiber faster than most people tie their shoes. The boss is here, he said, and he brought the air. My stomach tightened. The air was our nickname for Lucas Hayes, Walter's son. Last time I saw him, 6 years ago, he was a reckless 20. Year old, trying to install crypto software on a secured server. Suit, I asked. Worse, Evan muttered. Designer vest, sockless loafers. I exhaled slowly and headed toward the conference room, boots clicking over the raised flooring. Server lights pulsed behind glass walls like a heartbeat I'd protected for over a decade. I didn't know it yet, but that walk was my last as the person in control. My office turned out to be a collapsible table shoved against a concrete wall. The chair was one of those ancient fabric ones, the kind that remembers every bad lunch decision anyone ever made. A dark stain on the seat looked suspiciously like dried salsa. I sat there longer than I should have, listening to the data center breathe through the wall. The low frequency hum of transformers vibrated up through the floor and into my bones. It felt like standing outside your own house while a stranger rearranged the furniture and wired explosives in the living room. I finally opened the HR packet. It was worse than insulting. A revised compensation schedule, lower pay, justified by reduced operational scope. A duty list that included archiving legacy documents, digitizing handwritten logs, and assisting the director with flexible scheduling needs. Flexible scheduling. I was being demoted into a glorified assistant. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. I wiped it away angrily, leaving a smear of machine grease across my face. I don't cry, I troubleshoot. But this wasn't something you could fix with tools. You can't patch stupidity when it owns a controlling share. My phone buzzed. Evan. He wants the root admin credentials. Says he's reviewing user permissions. Rachel. He doesn't even know the difference between sudo and root. What do? My instinct screamed to run back onto the floor, yank Lucas away from the consoles, and save everyone from themselves. Instead, I looked back at the job description. Responsibility for 2. Maintain accurate records of operational directives and authorization chains. Walter had bragged earlier that clients loved the safety protocols. Loved my name. I inhaled slowly. The air in the clause. It was stale. But my thoughts sharpened. Rage cooled into something dense and glass. Hard. I typed back. Me, give him access. Everything he requests. Log the request. Log the transfer. And Evan, do not correct or undo anything unless he orders it in writing. There was a pause. Evan, you're serious. He'll wreck something. Me, not today. Just document. I set the phone down. In the corner of the room were cardboard boxes stacked to the ceiling, each stamped in fading marker. Oldie records do not destroy. Walter had dumped them there years ago, promising we'd sort it out later. I walked over and tore the tape off the first box. Dust floated under the flickering fluorescent light. Inside were thick binders labeled with bureaucratic boredom. Disaster mitigation, funding, state infrastructure, filings, hazardous systems oversight. I pulled one at random. This was from the post-rebuild era, after the regional storm that had nearly wiped us out. The facility had received substantial federal assistance to reinforce power redundancy and emergency systems. I flipped to the early pages. There it was, a clause buried in dense language. Funding eligibility is contingent upon continuous oversight by a state licensed senior infrastructure operator. Any change in designated personnel must be reported within 3 business days and may trigger a full compliance review. I traced the signature at the bottom, Rachel Moore. The next binder was insurance, coverage for hospital data continuity. Another clause, all life. Critical systems must remain under direct supervision of a certified professional with no fewer than 8 years of documented experience. Signed again. My name. I leaned back in the chair. The humiliation in my chest drained away, replaced by something colder, more precise. They hadn't just sidelined me. They had destabilized the legal skeleton holding their entire operation upright. Walter thought my name on the compliance wall was decoration. A confidence booster for auditors. He never realized it was structural. He wanted paperwork. Fine, I was going to become the paperwork. I powered on the ancient desktop they'd left behind. The fan screamed like a jet engine with asthma. I cracked my knuckles. Step 1. Inventory. I needed to know exactly how much of this company was legally attached to me. That's when I heard it. A heavy thump from beyond the wall, then a metallic crash. Lucas's voice echoed faintly. Who left this ladder here? Jesus. Move this junk. I smiled. He'd tripped over the access ladder for the gas suppression system, missed the release handle by inches. If he'd hit it, the room would have flooded with inert gas and evacuated the oxygen in seconds. I opened a new spreadsheet. Title: Exit Strategy, and got to work. That evening, I didn't go straight home. I drove my aging sedan out to the overlook near the reservoir, where the high-voltage transmission towers marched across the water like steel giants. Red warning lights blinked in perfect rhythm. Reliable, predictable, unlike my career. My phone buzzed, a banking alert. Mortgage draft scheduled. $1 380 reality snapped back into place. I couldn't storm out. I couldn't afford dramatic exits. I had a modest ranch house and a mother in assisted care 2 towns over care that cost more every month than Lucas probably spent on designer shoes. If I quit, the insurance vanished. If the insurance vanished, everything else followed. Walter knew that. That's why he felt safe. He thought I was trapped, not trapped. I muttered, crushing my cigarette into a soda can in the truck bed. Dormant. At home, I cleared the kitchen table. Technically, I wasn't supposed to remove records from the site, but as the newly appointed archivist who exactly was going to stop me, I spread out the photocopies. It was a mosaic of liability, state resilience filings, environmental permits, tax abatements tied to certified technical leadership. Everywhere I looked, my name, client contracts were worse. The hospital network agreement included a termination clause triggered by loss of qualified oversight. No grace period, no warning. If I walked, they weren't inconvenienced, they were breached. I poured a cheap drink and kept reading. By the time I checked the clock, it was past 2:00 a.m. I had 3 options. Stay and slowly watch incompetence dismantle what I built. Leave and be blamed when it collapsed. Or create a record so airtight that when it fell apart, the responsibility landed exactly where it belonged. I chose option 3. I opened a notepad, the paper trail 1. Document the transition 2. Allow Lucas full authority 3. Record every decision 4. Notify stakeholders. Formally, professionally, relentlessly. No sabotage required. Entropy would do the rest. The next morning, the break room was unrecognizable. The old vending machine was gone. In its place sat a gleaming espresso machine and a basket of wellness fruit, already attracting flies. "It's about culture," Lucas announced, holding a tiny cup like it granted wisdom. Evan caught my eye and nodded toward the main display. The temperature settings had changed. For 15 years, we'd run the halls conservatively. Now the screen read 78 degrees F. I approached calmly. "Why the change? Efficiency." Lucas said, "Read a case study. Big tech runs hotter, saves money." I nodded, understood. "I'll log the override," and I wrote it down. Time, decision, justification. Later that afternoon, the floor vibrated, then stopped. The weekly generator test had been manually aborted. Minutes later, Evan burst into my office, pale. He shut it down mid-cycle. I closed my eyes. "Log it," I said, and when the shaking in my hands passed, I reached for the phone. Not Walter, not Lucas, someone who trusted me. "Becky." Gary's voice was warm, too warm. "Why are you in archives? I thought you were running the show." "Changes, Gary. Exciting changes?" I said brightly, vague enough to be convincing. "I'm updating contact logs for the new director. Just wanted to confirm your emergency escalation protocol. Same as always. Call me, then the CIO. Perfect. Just a heads up since I'm non-operational now. All automated alerts about generator health and thermal variances go straight to Brian. I won't be verifying them anymore. Silence, long, heavy. Wait, Gary said slowly. You're not verifying alerts. Nope, strictly paperwork now. Brian streamlining, reducing generator test cycles. Another pause. He's reducing tests. Diesel savings, very green. The warmth drained from Gary's voice. The hospital didn't care about green. They cared about ventilators. I hung up before he could ask more. Fuse lit. By Friday, the data center smelled like hot plastic and bad decisions. Cold aisle temperature, 74 degrees F and climbing. Fans screamed at max RPM like a jet engine trapped in a library. Brian walked the floor wearing noise, canceling headphones, blissfully ignorant. Harold waddled in, sweating. Hot in here, huh? It's 78 degrees, Harold. Physics doesn't negotiate. Brian's tuning the piety loops. He sat on my folding table. It groaned. We have a hiccup. Insurance renewals, fire suppression certification, needs a certified operator signature. He slid papers across the table, yellow sticky notes everywhere. Sign here, top document, an affidavit claiming the Helen system was fully operational. The system Brian almost tripped over with a ladder. I asked, he didn't trip, he interacted with it. Brian's certification wasn't pending. Brian couldn't identify a suppression nozzle if it bit him. So you want me to sign? Just for this quarter, you're still licensed, we're a family. If I signed and the system failed, I'd go to jail. They weren't borrowing my past, they were mortgaging my future. I'll review these. I said, you wrote half of it. Harold smiled tightly. Don't be difficult. 4 o'clock. I lied. Good girl, he said, patting my shoulder. We're all going to be rich. I checked the accounting server access they forgot to revoke. Safety first, fire protection. Cancelled reason. Too expensive replacement. Jim's fire and lawn a landscaper, maintaining $1 million inert gas system. I laughed dry, broken, mechanical. I didn't sign. Instead, I drew a perfect little middle finger on the signature line and shredded the document. Then I corrupted the PDF template. Harmless thumbnail, printer, crashing payload. Finally, I emailed the state fire marshal. I no longer hold operational authority at Lone Star Data. Please advise on removing my license from active compliance immediately. That email was a tactical nuke. 72 hours or shutdown. I left one more gift. Epoxy in the admin console USB ports. Glitter in the keyboard seams. Petty, yes, satisfying, immensely. Sunday night, Gary texted. We need to talk off the record. Waffle House, I-35, 6 a.m. Wars are planned at Waffle House. He brought Alina. Infrastructure Investment Fund. Shark eyes, black coffee. We're building a Tier 4 facility. She said, we need an ops lead, immediately. This isn't a job interview. I said, it's a mutiny. Are you really out? Gary asked. I'm gone, I said. I called the fire marshal. Alina smiled, predator, level. She slid a napkin across the table. The number was 3 years of my salary. I start Tuesday. I said, Monday is their investor meeting. Monday morning. Full parking lot, rental cars, suits. Did you sign the fire forms? Harold asked. I took care of it. Brian presented savings. Investors asked questions. I stayed silent. Then the door opened. State fire marshal. Gary, process server. I'm shutting you down. The marshal said, 0 minutes to comply. Harold turned slowly toward me. Becky. I stood, smoothed my Carhartt pants, and smiled. Actually, I said, my voice carrying cleanly across the room, it's Miss Miller, and I believe my exit interview is overdue. The silence was so dense you could have wrapped it in plastic and sold it as a weighted blanket. The fire marshal. Rick stood with his arms crossed. He looked like a man who ate concrete for breakfast and washed it down with black coffee. The investors had already pulled out their phones. Lawyers were being texted. Funding was evaporating in real time. Harold tried to save it. Rick, buddy, he said, walking around the table with open arms. This is a misunderstanding, a clerical error. Becky, Miss Miller is right here. She's our senior operator. He turned to me, eyes pleading. Tell him you're still supervising the floor. Just a title change, right? This was it. I looked at Brian. The disruptor trademark had collapsed into his chair, deflated like a popped balloon. I looked at the investors. Actually, Harold, I said, stepping forward, I'm not. His smile flickered, like a dying fluorescent bulb. I'm the compliance archivist. I continued, slow and precise. My job description, written by Brian and signed by you, states that my duties are administrative only. No operational authority, no safety oversight, which means I cannot be the licensed operator of record. But you're here, Harold hissed. Just say you are. We'll fix the paperwork later. That would be fraud, I said sweetly, and I don't look good in orange. Rick stepped in. Mr. Jenkins, he said flatly, if Miss Miller isn't responsible for life safety systems, who is? Do you have another level 4 operator on site? Harold turned to Brian. Brian, you took the course, right, the online one? Brian went the color of spoiled guacamole. I watched the videos, he said weakly. I didn't take the exam. The website was down. The website was down, Rick repeated. You're running a tier Roman 3 data center hosting 911 dispatch, and that's your qualification. From the doorway, Gary cleared his throat. This constitutes a material breach of contract, he said calmly. Paragraph 4, Section C. Immediate termination for cause. He dropped a folder on the table. We're pulling the data, moving to the new facility, effective immediately. You can't do that, Brian squeaked. We have a contract. You had a contract, Gary corrected. Now you have a liability. Harold turned on me, the family mask finally gone. You did this, he snarled. You planned this. After everything I did for you, you gave me a paycheck, I said quietly. I gave you a legacy. I reached into my bag and pulled out the HR packet. You wanted paperwork. I did paperwork. I slid it across the table. It hit Brian's elbow. Every denied maintenance request, every temperature spike, every generator shutdown, the fall of Rome, timestamped. The investors stood grabbing briefcases. We don't invest in fraud, one said. They walked out. Rick checked his watch. You have 1 hour to power down non-essential loads. After that, we cut the main breaker. 1 hour, Brian panicked. We can't migrate data in an hour. No, I said. You can't. I looked at Mike by the door, trying not to grin. Mike, I said, you want a job. Where? With me in Alena. 20% raise. No sriracha-based management. He ripped off his badge and dropped it. I'm in, Sarah, I asked. Please, she whispered. I turned back to Harold. I'm done here. The words tasted like champagne. As I walked out, Brian shouted, You can't steal our staff. That's poaching. It's the free market. I said over my shoulder. I thought you loved disruption. The server hall was unbearable now, fans screaming, red lights blinking, a symphony of failure, and for the first time in 15 years I wasn't conducting it. At my locker, I packed my life into a printer, paper box. 15 years, that was it. Mike lit a cigarette outside. He tried to divide by 0, he said. Competence divided by ego. I replied. The blast doors hissed open. Harold ran out. Desperate now. Please, he begged, gripping my truck door. The hospital people could die. They won't. I said calmly. Gary's been mirroring the data for 3 days. I set the script Sunday night. His face collapsed. I protected the client. I said, that's what a responsible operator does. I'll triple your salary, he begged. I'll fire Brian. It's too late. I said, you can't patch trust. I shut the door, the engine rumble. Honest, dependable, where to, boss? Mike asked. Waffle House. I said, Elena's buying. As I pulled away, the lights flickered. Then went dark. Lone Star data was dead. 3 months later, Lone Star is a spirit Halloween. No joke. You can buy a sexy nurse costume where the 911 servers used to sit. Harold declared bankruptcy and moved to Florida to start a crypto consultancy. Brian became a TikTok mindset influencer. 12 views per video, one is me. As for me, I run Tech Core 1. 68 degrees, perfect hum, all green. Mike runs the floor, I own the lights. An intern asked me my secret. I said, never let them turn you into paperwork, and always know where the manual kill switch is. I went back to my screens. Nobody turns the lights off anymore.